$1,200 of smoker will not save a dry brisket. I know because I ruined about 40 of them in my own backyard. Call it $2,000 worth of beef, doing everything the famous videos told me. I wrapped it exactly 165. I sat up all night feeding a fire like it was a newborn. But the slice that finally changed everything for me came off a rusted offset in Central Texas. And the old pitmaster who cut it looked at me and said the juiciest part of his cook happens after the fire goes out. I'm going to give you that secret today, the whole thing, exactly the way it was explained to me. And I want to be upfront about something because I wish someone had been upfront with me. It is not a rub, it is not an injection, it is not some $400 accessory, and you do not need Wagyu beef to make it work. It's a step that the best barbecue joints in Texas build their entire schedule around, and that backyard cooks skip almost every single time, usually without even knowing it exists. Before I hand it over, you need to understand why brisket fights you in the first place, because the secret only makes sense once you see the problem clearly. Brisket is two different muscles pretending to be one piece of meat. The point is the thick, fatty end, marbled all the way through, and it's very hard to dry out. The flat is the lean end, the part that slices into those pretty rectangles, and it is thin, tight, and absolutely loaded with connective tissue. That tissue, mostly collagen, is like a net of rubber bands woven through the meat. Cook it wrong and you get one of two failures. Pull the brisket too early and the collagen never breaks down, so every bite chews like a truck tire. Push the heat too hard, trying to force it, and you squeeze the moisture out of that lean flat before the collagen ever finishes. Dry and tough at the same time, the worst of both worlds. Sound familiar? That was my first 2 years of briskets right there. Now here's the piece that unlocked everything for me. Collagen doesn't melt at a temperature, it melts at a temperature over time. Somewhere past 160 internal, collagen slowly starts converting into gelatin, and gelatin is the entire ballgame. It's that rich, sticky, lip-coating moisture you feel in a perfect slice. What reads as juicy and great brisket is barely about water at all. It's gelatin. And the conversion is slow, painfully slow. The meat needs to spend hours in that conversion zone, not minutes. Which brings us to the part of the cook everybody already knows, and the part almost nobody does. You know the routine. Smoke at around 250. Right out the stall, that maddening stretch in the 150s, where the internal temperature just parks for hours while evaporation cools the meat as fast as the fire heats it. Wrap in butcher paper to push through. Keep going until a probe slides into the flat like it's going into warm butter, usually somewhere around 203 degrees. Every YouTube pitmaster on earth will take you that far, and none of it is wrong. But here's what I watched happen in Texas that broke my brain a little. The brisket came off the pit probe tender at around 8 at night, and nobody sliced it. Nobody even peeked at it. It went, still wrapped, into a warming box, and it sat there until 11 o'clock the next morning. 15 hours. When they finally opened that paper, the brisket was still steaming, and juice ran off the cutting board onto the floor. That's the secret. The hold. Not a rest, a hold. Those are two different animals, and the difference is the whole game. A rest is what backyard cooks do, 20 minutes on the counter while you set the table, and its only job is to let the surface cool enough that the juices don't gush out when you slice. A hold is something else entirely. You take the finished, wrapped brisket and you keep it at roughly 150 degrees, give or take, for anywhere from 4 hours to overnight. The meat never really stops cooking, it just downshifts. And in that low, gentle window, the collagen that didn't finish converting on the pit keeps quietly turning into gelatin hour after hour with zero risk of drying out because there's no longer enough heat to squeeze moisture from the muscle. The gelatin redistributes. The fat relaxes into the lean. The whole brisket sort of settles into itself. The top joints in Texas don't treat this as a bonus step. They schedule their lives around it. Goldie's in Fort Worth, the crew that took the #1 spot on Texas Monthly's barbecue list in 2021, has talked openly about long overnight holds being central to how their brisket eats. Franklin Barbecue in Austin, the most famous brisket operation on the planet, holds for hours before service. When you stand in one of those lines at 11 in the morning, The brisket you're about to eat almost certainly came off the fire the night before. You waited 3 hours in line. The brisket waited longer. And this is why your brisket, cooked from the same playbook with the same wood and the same rub, never tastes like theirs. You've been skipping the step where the juiciness actually happens. You ran the first 14 hours of a 16-hour recipe and wondered why the ending felt off. I did it for 2 years. Absolute facepalm moment when I finally saw it. So how do you pull this off at home without a $2,000 commercial warming cabinet? Easier than you'd think. Your kitchen oven, the appliance you already own, will hold most of a brisket cook's magic for you. When the brisket comes off the smoker probe tender, leave it wrapped in its butcher paper. Let it sit out just until the internal temperature drifts down out of the 190s, maybe 45 minutes. Then put it on a sheet pan in the oven at its lowest setting, usually around 170. If your oven runs hot, crack the door or cycle it off and on. Then walk away. 4 hours minimum. 6 to 10 is better. Overnight is what the pros do. A good cooler stuffed with towels will carry a shorter hold too, though it'll slowly lose ground after about 4 or 5 hours. So the oven is the more forgiving tool for the long haul. The first time I did a proper 12-hour hold, my wife took one bite and asked which restaurant I'd snuck out to. Same smoker, same rub, same grocery store brisket as every failure before it. The only new ingredient was patience after the fire. Now this is exactly the kind of thing I kept wishing somebody had collected in one place back when I was burning up all that beef. So I finally did it myself. I put the entire system, the hold schedules, the oven settings, the budget cuts that punch way above their price into the Poor Man's Brisket ebook. Scan the QR code on screen if you want it, or the links in the description. Okay, back to the meat, because the hold has a few rules you can't break. Rule 1, and this is the one that ruins holds: never start one with an underdone brisket. The hold finishes tenderness, but it cannot rescue a brisket you pulled at 185, hoping the box would do your job. It won't climb. It'll just sit there tough for 10 hours. Probe tender first, hold second, no exceptions. Rule 2, keep it wrapped the entire time. Open paper in a warm box means evaporation, and evaporation is the enemy you spend all day fighting. Rule 3, and this one matters for your family's safety: don't let the meat drop below about 140 for hours on end. That's the food safety line. A real hold keeps the brisket above it the entire time, which, by the way, is another reason the oven beats the cooler for anything long. Get those 3 right and you've unlocked most of what the secret can do. But there are 2 upgrades that stack on top of the hold, and the second one is my favorite thing I brought home from Texas. The first is tallow, beef fat rendered down. Plenty of Texas joints save the fat they trim off the brisket, render it slowly, and pour a few spoonfuls over the meat when it gets wrapped. Through a long hold, that liquid fat bastes the flat continuously from every direction. It doesn't inject moisture into the muscles so much as coat every fiber on the way to your mouth, and your brain reads that as juicy just the same. You can render your own from your trimmings in a slow cooker while the brisket smokes. Costs you nothing. It was going in the trash anyway. The second upgrade is where I'll let you in on something that sounds like heresy. After the hold became my routine, I stopped buying expensive briskets entirely. Prime grade, the pricey stuff with the heavy marbling, exists largely as insurance against a rushed cook. All that extra internal fat protects the flat when you push too hard and slice too soon. But when a long hold is doing the protecting, a plain choice brisket, sometimes half the price per pound, comes out so close that I've served both side by side and watched people pick the cheap one. The hold doesn't just make brisket juicier, it makes expensive beef optional. The Pitmaster who taught me all this cooked briskets that people drove 2 hours for, and he told me flat out he'd never bought a prime brisket in his life. His words were, "The box does the work, son, not the wallet." Think about what that means for you. The gap between your backyard brisket and the stuff people line up for at dawn was never your smoker, never your beef budget, never some rub recipe guarded like a state secret. It was a warming step that costs $0 and demands nothing from you, but a night of sleep while your oven babysits. So here's your assignment for the weekend. Cook your next brisket exactly the way you always do, but when it hits probe tender, don't slice it. Wrap it tight, slide it into a 170 oven before you go to bed, and cut into it at lunch the next day. One cook, that's the whole experiment. And when the juice pools on your cutting board for the first time, come back to this video and tell me about it in the comments, because I read every one, and those stories are the best part of this job. It makes you wonder how many other talent gaps work this way. How many things we assume separate us from the best. The gear, the genetics, the budget, turn out to be one unglamorous step the pros do quietly while everyone's staring at the fire. Barbecue taught me that lesson for $2,000. You just got it for free. If you want more of the cheap, old-school Texas tricks that beat expensive gear, subscribe, because next week I'm showing you why the best bark of your life comes from a $17 trick, and the fire is only half the story.